What up, everyone? Welcome back. Today I want to talk about one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people struggle with the Bible, and it's honestly one of the reasons that I used to walk away from God myself. It's the story in Genesis of Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A lot of people, they look at that story and they think, wait a minute, God told them that they would die the day that they ate that fruit and they didn't drop dead, so was God the liar? And if that's the first lie told, then he must be the father of lies, thus making God the devil. A lot of people look at that story and they think those things, but they'll be like, wait a minute, God told them that they would die and they didn't drop dead, and the serpent told them that their eyes would be opened and they'd become like God, and that actually happened. So was the serpent the one telling them the truth? Was the serpent actually liberating them and setting them free? And those two questions, they trip up a lot of people. They make God look dishonest and the devil look like the good guy. And I get it. I used to be one of those people. I used to feel that exact same way. But after studying it carefully, I realized that those objections, they come from a misunderstanding of what the story is actually saying. So in this video, I'm going to walk through it simply and clearly, what the knowledge of good and evil really means, and why God wasn't the liar, why he wasn't lying about the consequences, and why the serpent was the real deceiver. So let's get into it. All right. Here are the two biggest contentions that many people have with the Genesis story, stated clearly and briefly, followed by the connections, okay? Number one, God lied about the consequences. God told Adam and Eve, in the day that you eat of it, you will surely die, yet after they ate, they did not drop dead. They lived for hundreds more years. So it looks like God either exaggerated or just flat out lied about the punishments. Number two, the serpent was actually the liberator. The serpent said that they would not die and that eating the fruit would open their eyes and make them like God, knowing good and evil. After they ate, their eyes were opened and they did gain knowledge. Meanwhile, God seems restrictive and controlling. So it looks like the serpent was telling the truth and freeing them, while God was the one holding them back with a false threat. Those two misunderstandings are major reasons why people reject the Bible and they walk away from God. They make God look dishonest and they make the devil look like the hero. I used to see it that way too, until I looked at it deeper. So let's correct these things here. God did not lie. The serpent was not liberating them. You shall surely die never meant that they would instantly fall over dead. It meant that on that very day, the process of death would begin. Their close living relationship with God would be broken. That's why many Christians call it a spiritual death. Their physical death would enter the human story in that moment as well. Not instantly, but it would begin there. So that is exactly what happens. They immediately feel shame, fear, distance from God, and mortality becomes their future. The Hebrew phrase is the standard way of announcing a death sentence that takes effect, not a promise of instantaneous collapse. The knowledge that they gain was not God-like wisdom that the serpent promised. It was the painful first-hand experience of losing the good that they already had by their own free choice to disobey. And that's important. We'll get into it. Before the act, they only heard about evil. After the act, they lived the loss of innocence, peace, and intimacy with God. And that is a completely different and tragic kind of knowledge to have. The serpent twisted the truth just enough to make disobedience look like liberation, and in reality, he led them into bondage, into shame, and into death. So when God later says, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, he is speaking with irony, pointing out how far short of the serpent's promise they actually fell. The early church fathers like Augustine, Ephraim, Irenaeus, and many others, they all read the passage that way. The real knowledge came through the experience of their disobedience. The serpent lied, and God's words exposed the lie rather than confirm it. So, in short, the story only looks like God's the liar and the serpent is the liberator when we read it too quickly or we force modern assumptions onto these ancient words. Once the actual meaning of death and knowledge and the difference between hearing about evil and choosing it become clear, the contentions kind of disappear. So God told the truth, the serpent deceived them, and the consequences were exactly what was warned. What does the knowledge of good and evil actually mean? Adam and Eve already knew what good felt like. They lived in a perfect garden with God. No shame, no fear, no pain, no broken relationships, and everything was right. Everything was whole. The special knowledge that they gained was not just finding out that evil exists. It was a deeper kind of knowledge that comes only when you yourself choose to do something wrong. So evil in the biblical sense is not a thing. It's not a substance that you can pick up. It is the loss or the privation of something that is good that should have been there. So you truly know that loss only when your own free choices cause it. So for example, a child can be beaten and suffer real evil as a victim. That's terrible. But that child did not choose it. A person can watch someone else do something cruel and feel shock or sadness, but that is witnessing evil. It's not the same thing. The knowledge Genesis talks about is different. It comes only when you actively decide to step away from what is good, that privation. You use your own will to create that privation. Then you feel the results from the inside, like shame, fear, hiding, blaming others, the sense that something precious is now gone. That's the knowledge. Adam and Eve only received that knowledge the moment that they disobey. Hearing the serpent's lie and feeling tempted wasn't enough. When they reached out and they took the fruit and they ate it, everything changes. Suddenly they feel shame, they cover themselves, they hide from God, and they start accusing each other. They had lost the good that they used to enjoy, and they knew it because they had caused it. That is the knowledge that the story is talking about. So yes, people can experience evil by being hurt or by watching other people do evil things, but Genesis is talking about a specific kind of knowledge. It is the painful first-hand knowledge that you only get by choosing to do the evil stuff yourself. The serpent said, "You will not die. You will be like God, knowing good and evil." That was a lie mixed with just enough truth to deceive them. So they did die that day, not by falling over dead, but by losing their close life with God. The separation of God is death. Spiritual death and the beginning of a physical death started right then and there. They did not become like God. God is perfectly good and never chooses evil, and Adam and Eve only knew evil by doing it and suffering the loss. That is the opposite of becoming like God. When God later says, "The man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil," he's speaking with heavy irony. Like, it's kind of like a parent saying, "Oh, so now you think you know everything?" After their child kind of made a huge mess of things. So God is not agreeing with the serpent. He's pointing out how sad and how twisted the results really were. The early Christian teachers, they understood it the same way. On the knowledge coming through their own disobedience and the experience of loss, read a couple quotes here. It was not in order to see outward things that their eyes were opened, because they could see such things already. It was in order that they might see the difference between the good that they had lost and the evil in which they had fallen. This is why the tree is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They had been forbidden to touch it, because if they did it, would bring on the experience of this distinction. It takes the experience of the pains of sickness to open our eyes to the pleasantness of health. That's St. Augustine. For it was not the tree, as some think, but disobedience that had death in it. Before they ate the fruit, they had perceived in reality only good, and they had heard about evil only by hearsay. After they ate, however, a change occurred, so now they would only hear about good by hearsay, whereas in reality, they would taste only evil. That's St. Ephraim the Syrian. God was mocking Adam, in that Adam had previously been told, "You will become like God, knowing good and evil." This was your reason for despising my commandment, that you had notions of equality. Lo, you have become what you expected, or rather, not what you had expected, but what you deserved to become. But that God was true, and the serpent a liar, was proved by the result, death having passed upon them who has eaten. For along with the fruit they did also fall under the power of death, because they ate in disobedience, and disobedience to God entails death. So in short, the knowledge of good and evil in Genesis is the hard personal knowledge that comes only when you yourself choose to do wrong and you experience the privation of good. That's the knowledge of evil. Being a victim or a witness to evil, it's not the same thing. The serpent lied when he promised that they would become like God, and God's later words simply underline how far short of that promise they fell, exactly as the church fathers taught from the very beginning. So I suggest when you guys have your contentions with the scripture, don't do what I did. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours on different social media streams, live streams, talking to Christians, trying to get them to explain this for me when the explanations were in books all along. I just had to find the right ones. Anyway, I hope this helps. God bless.